Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. I want to speak about a concept that really has esoteric emphasis all around the world. And it kind of has to do with how I'm trying to think of a way to kind of explain it. Well, the title is Witnessing the Witness. The witness was a component to one's existence one's experience of existence that in some sense pretty much comes down to the mystery of consciousness. You see, we are not. Excuse me. We're not purely objective beings. Really what it is sight is emergent in the moment. As it emerges in the moment, it has a component that is objective, and what that means is certain parts of the moment that are changing slower than other parts of the moment. I'm trying to think if my future self came from a time machine right now, how would I explain this idea to it? Here's the thing, guys. At some point in the human experience, you're identifying with something, some room of manifestation. Eventually, after certain turbulences in reality, certain karmic movements, the human being will realize they're not actually in one room. Ultimately, that would mean the human being will begin wondering about the rooms of existence, the rooms of conception that attention dwells in. When you become a creature of attention, it is very different than being a creature of thought and a creature of matter. To be a creature of matter, even though you have choice to move your physical body, but if you do not preserve and keep certain balanced modes of the physical body, in some sense, you cannot even have that free will. You see, so the biological program is something that whether we like it or not, we have to be observant of, aware and alert, and kind of continue with the games of survival on this planet. Now, as the person continues, let's say we reached a point in our history where it was just objective survival. Chop wood, carry water to the max. That means every moment is just maintenance, 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 until one day, in this cycle of maintenance, the being will ask a question that no human being outside of one's eyes can answer. To be honest, I am speaking for those crowds, for those human beings who feel there is more to see. Regardless of what they have seen. So at some point of maintaining the objective biological program, this creature in this existence on this rock in the middle of nowhere it will use the same pattern. It will use the same kind of patterns and habits it has from the objective program to wonder about its subjective program. What that means is if you're in a dark room, they turn on that room, the light of that room, and you can touch objects in that room. Well, guess what? Imagine that suddenly the person considers their imagination to be a room that is dark. It doesn't mean the room is empty. It doesn't mean there is nothing there. It doesn't mean it's a hallucination. It just means that it's too dark to see. Their dark matter and dark energy are not just in front of man's eyes, they're also behind it. There's many black holes behind one's eyes. The subjective realm is filled with them. You know, even your current moment in your subjective realm is kind of black hole-like. So imagine wondering about the imagination as being a room where, if illuminated, if the attention can reverse, I don't want to say reverse engineer, but like if the attention can revert to an acceptance of being, then it will see all that it can do. I have a character I've designed in my science fiction novel called The Messenger of Giants. The main character's name is Rasul, and he's walking in New York City in the year 5025. And New York City, where it was streets of the corrupt, has now become the most divine place in the world. So in my novel, Wall Street has become like a divine place where the most holiest people are kind of like washing the streets of Wall Street, you know? So this main character goes to Central Park, you know, in New York, and he goes and sits on a rock. And I don't know, I don't remember the exact details of the park. I've been to it, but anyways, the main character goes and he sits on a rock in the middle of a river. And when he goes and sits there, he closes his eyes, and the way I've written it was so nice. I wrote that he starts taking steps towards his pure lands. As if beings reach the point of clarity that they realize their ever presence is fields of intelligence. So really what the Pure Lands was that if there is no body, how could a body die? So if to the experiencer there came a sort of moment where the significance of objectivity became the effect of a non-objective cause, do you see how we're getting to witnessing the witness, witnessing the attributeless? And really the witness of the attributeless has no justification in space and time. That means really, if space and time asked us what's in your pocket, and if what was in our pocket didn't have shape, we can't say a single word. By the way, guys, I feel I should mention these at the beginning. Anybody who feels they, like as I'm saying the talk, they feel they might have a comment on the topic, please feel free to share in the comment section. I will be more than happy to engage. But anyways, let's continue. So what I'm saying is, man is not just looking for the right eyes to look through, which is ideological worship nowadays, but he is looking for a sight where there is a resolution to the inevitable. We are all reacting to emptiness in our subconscious. Do you know what that means? That means even if somebody dares on this planet stand in front of you, you know, and in some sense call themselves the sort of king, do you know, a sort of as if they feel they have attained power. Let me tell you, any level of power, any power level attained on this planet is nothing. Is nothing. It's like an ant. Good job. The ant could move a bigger object than its body, but it's still an ant. You see, so the human vision is very important. People need to develop ego vision. They need to be able to look from the branches of knowledge and soar in the skies, attributeless skies of their conscious mind, and envision the world as if the eagle is looking down at the whole forest. Do you know what that means? That means where you are defines you, and where you are behind your eyes also defines you. Now, where you are behind your eyes has to do with your experiential attention before being bombarded or bunkered down or masked in various ideological pursuits. I noticed something about the mind. Do you know what causes suffering? Unfinished business. That's it. Unfinished business causes suffering. Attempts of the psyche, attempts of the archetypal mind to act, to express, to be something, but not getting enough time. The moment changed too quick. The moment was not enough. The moment went too soon. The moment went too late. All various excuses of this this phenomenology that we are being different things. Do you know, it freaked me out when I realized the mind is liquid-like? And this is a fascinating thing, guys, because you see, we can see very simply in a substance such as water, you know, that its elemental position, or let me not say elemental position, the substance's nature in the freezer, the same substance has become ice. Do you see, in a different temperature, it behaves differently, you know? That means in different environments, there's different archetypes. No person is just one thing. Because that one thing cannot exist without the others in relation to its own separation. So imagine the mind is like a substance that can be in the solid state. That means it's completely like ice. The shape of the moment, the material existence is it. And then the mind can become like liquid. That means it can fit into the container of any objective moment. That is how incredible the mind is. The mind is an expert before it knows it. And then there are states where this, in quotations, mind substance becomes like gas. That is the samadhi state. That is in yogic practice where the inner life has become so static, the outer life becomes static. And when the outer life becomes static, then in that complete stasis of the moment, you witness the soul of heaven and earth move, as Morihei Ueshiba says. That's witnessing the witness. That's like that. This girl in the wallpaper looks at that kind of sacred divine deer, and the deer notices it too. That means the witness is being witnessed. I remember being raised on King Arthur cartoons when I was young, you know? Not like I don't know if I think there was a movie to it, but like what it was is like I remember the significance when I was a child and when I saw one man achieve what was impossible to others. It became kind of crucial because I noticed we all are the King Arthur of our own moments. Do you know? And we choose the intensity and the clarity to pull out vision into the moment. Seldom do they say this, but individual consciousness is not enough to manage life. You will never, I mean, that's too far. Not that you will never, but I'm just saying that there's a difference between someone who puts on a mask and thinks the mask is their face and someone who knows the mask is a mask. Now, if you ask which one of these two beings in the journey of life will go through this journey more smoother, I will tell you the one that knows its face, its real face is not the mask, will not get offended at anything anybody says at the mask. This is why, as much as I've tried, guys, I've tried, and I notice how can I have critics? It was bothering me. There was a time I was wondering why can't I, in some sense, have critics? And I realized because no critic could see the experience that moved the language in my eyes. It's hidden. There are so many beautiful hidden and unhidden dimensions in this world. And I find here's the kind of existential surprise. that many scholars and many mindsets and many viewpoints throughout history have considered that human civilization, even though it is fragmented, eventually it will come to the conclusion of a unified force. That means we will live as separate nations for so long, until we're like, what if it was one nation? Do you know, how would the governance be? Like, we have children start thinking about what a united nation really means. United Nations really means. And we cannot have ethics, guys, because let me tell you, we have become too smart for our own good. That means if emotional goodness points something, the rational mind dismantles it. You see, it's fascinating. Life is never just rising purely or just falling purely. It's always a rise and fall. And when you understand this, you let go of how your mind interprets karma. That's a moment where Mr. Within says karma is no longer a bitch. Excuse my language. But but what I mean is that the interpreting mechanism no longer resists itself. You see, only when you fear emptiness, you will fear having things. Did you know this? That and so many people in this life do not allow themselves many things they want because they feel it will leave them. But in that process, not realizing it's kind of like everything's the one dance of a lifetime. Every moment you get one chance to journey through it, and in the next is awoken in some sense. Awakened. The common language of unknown exploration. You know, for a long time, I thought this language that is going to unite all human beings in the next 100 to 200 years, this sort of collective ethos narrative, you know, that means every person has a personal inspiration based on their personal truths. But when we wonder about the objective truths, we have to build the commonality. That means seldom is this said, but you have to work in keeping your world alive. And it's not just people, just creatures on the planet are very sensitive. We are an animal. I'm speaking to secular audiences here. We are an animal, an advanced animal that is aware of its death, aware of mortality. Some philosophers say what separates animals and, in some sense, human beings, you know, other species with the Homo sapien, is that we are conscious that the game will end. But many animals, you look at them, they're clueless. It's as if they have no idea what tomorrow has in store for them. But we get those updates on what's in the store, like on our phone. So you see what I mean? We have a relationship with not with only the present moment, but with the future self, because the program of survival keeps our attention going forward. That means it doesn't matter how enlightening a moment is. You will see it's as if the law of the cosmic universal, the law of the universal sector is like, go forth. That's it. It's as if like there is no going back, because then every creature would have been designed in ultimate memory. Do you see? And those human beings on this planet who have incredible memories, the reason they won't realize it, but their voice, so much of life gets preserved through attention. And when an idea knows that it has been preserved, it can close its eyes easily. There's a story ascribed to Rishi Vyasa, and Rishi Vyasa he authored in some sense the Mahabharata and the Gita, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam. I think they're similar. They're different versions, maybe. But anyways, yeah. So Rishi Vyasa, Ved Vyasa, he was seen as the teacher of all teachers. And I wondered why. And I realized because he asked. Because he saw things that were ahead of his time. And this is the story I wanted to tell you about him. That Rishi Vyasa, back in the day on leaves, evidently, like giant leaves, he writes 18 books, if I'm correct. 18 books, which are known as the Puranas. These profound kind of metaphoric storehouses of ethics. You know, I don't know how to tell you. It's like it's a collection of stories. Back in the day, this man was like doing something ahead of his time, you can say, writing that much on leaves. Like I could understand like maybe the beginning writer kind of writing one sentence on a leaf and getting fascinated, but writing 18 books suddenly on leaves, like that's some next level stuff, you know. Yeah. So anyways, he writes these, and the story goes that at the end of it, he's not satisfied, as if he feels he's contributed in some sense, but it's as if he's unfulfilled. You know, he has filled a certain percentage of the meaning to his life, but a certain percentage is unfulfilled. And then an angel comes to him, and the angel says, "Yo," the angel says, "Rishi Vyasa, unless you write about your devotion towards truth, which back in the day translated as your love of God, you know, you will not be content." And so what that means is it's kind of like a caterpillar turning into, what do you call it? A butterfly kind of, it's a metamorphosis situation there, where the person was just looking at life through a certain dimensional framework. And then when they have to be true, you don't just do it for the, like, how can I tell you? You will find a moment where the concept of discrimination will have a new rhythmic abidance. That means imagine you were a person who, let's say, here, I'll say this. I'll say this because probably there's people who look through these eyes in this world, so I'll say it. Imagine there is a person, let's start from a sort of edge of the spectrum. By the way, just to finish off that Rishi Vyasa story, he writes about his love of God, and that becomes the Bhagavad Gita. And the Gita is in some sense how God comes to counsel Arjuna on a battlefield, and in some sense, it's kind of a very unique book where God has come to man. Usually, man goes into situations where it's as if he is looking up, but it was as if the up was looking down in the Bhagavad Gita. It's as if Arjuna was God's company in that moment, you know. The view is simply this, that it's not just that external reality changes, but internal reality changes too. However, in every moment of our life, in all the laps we have ran around the sun, there, in order to be able to manage this changing self that we are, there must have been a still unchanging attention. That means if you notice when you do an action, yes, your physical body moves. For example, when you speak, your subjective realms move. But then there is always a stillness. Do you see? So there's a stillness and silence to life that if the person becomes content with, any sort of transition of manifestation in the conscious moment becomes just observable. So what that means is the witness no longer has a dualistic, the creature no longer has just a purely dualistic relationship with the moment. It's a phase kind of thing, guys, because I have memories personally, but I think this is pretty universal, that I have memories before I learned language. And I noticed that my emotions before language were only directed by temperature. That means before you're a creature, it depended by objective space. So I'm pretty much saying that we have entered the linguistic simulation. The human being enters it at an incredibly young age and then becomes an existent factor. And in order to fit in a society where there's many chess pieces, it has to assume a chess piece. You see, it has to, you have to identify then, or you wouldn't be able to go to the grocery store. You have to identify as an individual conscious being, or you wouldn't be able to go to the grocery store and buy stuff, you know? So individual consciousness is required, it is necessary. Civilization can be said an attempt at becoming more crystallized. That means it's as if, think about it, even scientifically they say it was like a pool of kind of, you know, strange energy, you know, not strange, but like this very kind of pool of energy where suddenly there was an explosion that over what is it, like so many years, like unfathomable years, I consider, suddenly the universe has cooled down, and it has become this manifestation we are, as if we were a cake put in the oven and this is how it looks like when it's done, you know. You know, so the crystallization of manifestation. We are crystallized energy. And we have reached a point where we have been a simple movement of nature. You know what's funny? That the less conscious we were that we existed, the less suffering we had, and the more just endless efforts of movement of the unconsciousness of nature occurred. That means before I was who I am, the world was turning, regardless if I could see its direction or not. So it's fascinating, you know, we have to realize as closeness in accordance to similarity of design. What that means is, think about it. Other species, it's very obvious. Like they are of the same design, so they run together, they move together. You see, why is it that ants aren't? You don't find ants in beehives, and you don't find bees in anthills. Maybe you might find bees in anthills, you know, if they're fighting over something sweet. But like, but you won't find. I don't know. Sugar declares war between the ant kingdom and the bee kingdom. You know? But what it is I'm saying that in nature there is collective rhythmic movement in accordance to environment, and similarly human beings have a more advanced awareness of their environment. Therefore, it means that they can have more of an advanced relationship with their species. Now, our species is reaching a cool time because what it's happening is it's like people are going to soon realize we need a collective video game. You see, that means the effort to keep to maintain a collective civilization, okay, is going to be like as if the attention of every 8 billion people to one collective humanity would kind of be saying like in their lives they're playing one video game that's humanity. And really, I noticed something hilarious. We have to create a reward based culture. That means we have to bring back honesty with a sort of reward like thing. Okay? And now this rewards, I'm not saying like you know, like a sort of like a gift card. I mean that simply, I don't know, back in the day there was a town, you know, and people would go communicate, and when there was a problem, as if eventually a champion of that problem would arrive. It's fascinating. It's as if sometimes I look at my ancestors and I'm like, what were you guys doing? And then I noticed that it's really the same way that leaf grows on that tree, human beings breathe. It is so simple, naturally. That means there are certain signs that the nature of your moment will give you, and these signs aren't even you shouldn't even say it's like the other dimensions, spiritual guidance from other dimensions. No, it's simply because you are in a state, and as you change state, you can relate, you can know the difference, you know. You know, I think what is the purpose of life is the is not the, maybe it should be the secondary to question to ask. And the primary question to ask is, I think every person should ask this in their life from themselves, and that is, what am I living for? And when you honestly ask that question, you reach a point of your mind where you see it is rational not to lie to self. That means to, it's like after idol worship, we started worshiping language, then we started worshiping language as ourselves, you know? And we are reaching a point where we are seeing that in all the times that our personal truths override the program of the objective truth, we are actually not in the world. When a person truly wonders about what they're living for, they can no longer ignore what is actually here. And really, independence, I find freedom, I'm talking about this in regards to the subjective realm, is a percentage of it you have to deal with the environment, of course, external environment, but in regards to your inner freedom, if you cannot see how everything in your life has been an experience of the here and now of every moment, so if it's like when you suddenly notice you are here, there is a you here, there is something here, there is something present here, there is something present and aware that it personalizes in accordance to the environments and the situations that it journeys through, navigates through. So if reality has appeared to us as a multidimensional kind of objective system, so the first thing the citizen of a multidimensional system must ask, how are the various dimensions that I see in my environment, how am I interpreting myself through them? So what that means is, believe it or not, a social creature must have a fragmented psyche. But the thing is that the fragmentation of the psyche can be adjusted. That means I remember my grandfather, of course, he passed away before he could, before I could see him a lot, actually. But I remember asking one of my cousins that what was some wisdom, like my grandfather had said to him, something unique. And he said, and my cousin said, like my grandpa had said to him, that whenever you come home from work and you enter the house, it's as if just like you take off your hat and coat, you are taking off the archetype of the working man and you're becoming a family man. Do you know? And so that's the relationship with treating your states of mind as various dress wear, as like how you've clothed a certain moment from the cold hard truth of an unknown emptiness. So to witness the witness is, I consider it a beautiful paradox. That means some people wonder what's inside Pandora's box. Mr. Within says it's a paradox. You know, it's like, or it's a parabox, you know. But anyways, the reason it's a paradox is because you see that it's, even in the Upanishads, they said the seer of sight is unseen. The hearer of sound cannot be heard. That means the observer of present in the moment as some sort of energetic conscious being is actually attributeless. It's attributeless because, not because it doesn't have attributes, because we cannot consciously filter it. So what that means is, the beautiful thing about reaching your limits and acknowledging the edge of your conscious vision is that there's a quote, I think it was by Hunter Thompson. He's like, when you're on the edge, you see things that you normally wouldn't see. So when you reach the edge of your limited beliefs, you're actually reaching the edge of what you know. And when you reach the edge of what you know, you suddenly see a scale, a vastness, that it's as if that it's like hope is like strangely a couple steps ahead, you know? Really, what I'm saying is we are having a living relationship with an objective self, a subjective self, and a witness that appears as the whole moment of being. As if, what is this soul kind of leaving the body like a ghost? That image is like bad marketing. That's bad spiritual PR. You know, this, even people being concerned about, for example, astral travel, or I can't tell you how many stories of people have literally come to me and said stories that are as if they've traveled in their dreams and to what appeared to them as like unknown realms. And so I'm like, okay, sure, you're traveling in your dream. A dream state is different than your conscious waking state. Okay, a dream state is when the mind is taking the responsibility of the body, but a conscious waking state is when a body is taking the responsibility of a mind. What does that mean? That means in a dream state, really your body's just on the bed sleeping. Your eyes are closed. There is no light entering your eyelids for any sort of visual perception. So it has to do with the mind's kind of data storage kind of phenomenology. All right, guys, so I found something interesting. I want to take you into a quote tunnel. It's a segment of these talks where I just dive into quotes that relate to either a theme or a certain person. So the theme is actually the word Atman, Atman, which you can say it means like the inner witness of the individual consciousness. Yeah. So let's I'm gonna just read quotes from it. Just take it in. All right. Where's this quote from? I think this is from the Upanishads. The quote says, "The ultimate goal of human life is to attain spiritual perfection, moksha, or freedom from transmigration of the Atman. The social existence of an individual is means for attaining the supreme goal. Since an individual cannot attain moksha without fulfilling his or her individual and social duties, responsibilities, and obligations. Hindu social philosophy includes the essential social principles and practices, goals of human life: dharma, which is the moral law; artha, which is wealth; kama, which is pleasure; and moksha, spiritual perfection or the ultimate goal." Okay, guys, let's move past that. In the Bhagavad Gita, it says, similar to a person who is not attached to external pleasures but enjoys happiness in the Atman soul, the person who perceives Brahman in everything feels everlasting joy. Fritjof Capra says the mystic and the physicist arrive at the same conclusion, one starting from the inner realm, the other from the outer realm. The harmony between their views confirms the ancient Indian wisdom that Brahman, the ultimate reality without, is identical to Atman, the reality within. Wow. Wow. Yeah. The ultimate reality without is identical to the Atman, the reality within. Not that because it's identical, I think, guys, because the dualistic relationship doesn't, the within and the without, the veil in between doesn't exist anymore. Sage Vyasa, Rishi Vyasa says similar to, we just read that. Okay, now. Ram Swarap says, but foreign should not be defined in geographical terms, then it would have no meaning except territorial or tribal patriotism. To me, that alone is foreign, which is foreign to truth, foreign to Atman. Atma Bodha says, he who, renouncing all activities, who is free of all the limitations of time, space, and direction, worships his own Atman, which is present everywhere, which is the destroyer of heat and cold, which is bliss eternal and stainless, becomes all-knowing and all-pervading, and attains therefore immortality. Sure, an ocean will definitely feel immortal to the drop, will feel like immortality. Anyways, Hermann Hesse, he says, there is, so I believe, in the essence of everything, something that we cannot call learning. There is, my friend, only a knowledge that is everywhere, that is Atman, that is in me and you and in every creature, and I am beginning to believe that this knowledge is no worse enemy than the man of knowledge, than learning. Wow. Adi Shankara says, one should understand that the Atman is always like the king, distinct from the body, senses, mind, and intellect, all of which constitute the matter prakriti, and is the witness of their functions. Yeah, that the mind that owns a material world. Adi Shankara says, though Atman is pure consciousness and ever present everywhere, yet it is perceived by the eye of wisdom alone. But one whose vision is obscured by ignorance, he does not see it, as the blind do not see the resplendent sun. Adi Shankara goes on to say, Atman never does anything, and the intellect of its own accord has no capacity to experience I know. But the individuality in us delusorily thinks he is himself the seer and the knower. Yeah, because guys, it's the only thing that can be a shape of a knower. Think of it this way, that it, just like how we see, like the young child had a teddy bear and made that teddy bear in that moment its like best friend or whatever, the teddy bear was real. We have made our own thoughts real as us. We are the embodiment of our subjective projections. Adi Shankara goes on to say, the Atman, the sun of knowledge that rises in the sky of the heart, destroys the darkness of the ignorance, pervades and sustains all, and shines and makes everything to shine. Vivekananda says, above all, beware of compromises. Hold on to your own principles in weal or woe, and never adjust them to others' fads. Through the greed of getting supporters, your Atman is the support of the universe. Whose support do you stand in need of? Vivekananda says, always discriminate. Your body, your house, the people around, and the world are all unreal like a dream. Always think that this body is only an inert instrument, and the Atman within is your real nature. Robert G. Brown, who evidently has a I think this is a dissertation. Robert G. Brown says, pure Vedantic Hinduism, as described in particular in the Upanishads, is monoist and either pandeist or panendeist. What are you doing to me, Robert? Pure Vedantic Hinduism, as described in particular in the Upanishads, is monoist and either pandeist or panendeist. Brahman is the universe. We as Atman or God souls are a part of Brahman and Brahman itself. Parts separated from the whole to be, able to appreciate the whole and ever seeking to rejoin the whole in its perfect state of being as all things. Brahman in the Upanishads is not a being that is worshipped. They make it absolutely clear that Brahman is indifferent to worship and is not the object of worship. Bansi Pandit says the Hindu theory of reincarnation is based upon four basic principles: permanence of the Atman, existence of Maya, the original ignorance, liberation, moksha of the Atman, from samsara and the law of karma. So what it's saying that before you can consider reincarnation, you got to kind of have these pillars in place where you're considering that there is the permanence of a sort of God self, and then there is the existence of Maya, the manifest material kind of simulation, and then there is liberation, a liberation of the Atman. So this kind of God self suddenly frees the self from being under a relationship of God, I think. And so it says, and from of the Atman from, sorry, liberation of moksha of the Atman from samsara. So what that means is this God self that is being a self in a ignorant kind of simulation of a manifest world, the Maya. So it's like the Atman that's the ever-present Atman is in like a rough video game, Maya, and its liberation depends on its freedom from samsara and the law of karma. So what that means is it's like really we are in a sort of unknown video game kind of like simulation where the consciousness has no choice other than to ascribe or externalize in regards to the objective or internalize in regards to the subjective. At the same time, it's like, how do you finish the game? Well, the moment the game, any video game finishes, there is a stopping point. So one cannot be in this kind of ultimate state of liberation unless there is a stop to that view that did not see that possible. To continue with the quote tunnel, Janine D. Fowler says liberation or moksha for much Vedantic thought was not something that can be reached or acquired, since the Atman is already there as the fundamental essence of the self is merely there to be experienced. Well said. Shankara says knowledge appears as the grace of God. In the higher knowledge, since the Atman is in reality not an object, the cause of its knowledge is not further explicable. In spite of this, religious practice recognizes certain means by which knowledge of the Atman may be promoted. Which is kind of strange in a way where I feel this indirectly, like it's a suggestion that religions were marketing campaigns for an ultimate reality. You know, Swami Vivekananda says, pray all the time, read all the scriptures in the world, and worship all the gods there are. But unless you realize the self, the Atman, there is no freedom. Very true. Unless you look within, you won't really be aware of what's really out there in the world. Swami Vivekananda says, this is the greatest lesson that we are here to learn through myriads of births and heavens and hells, that there is nothing to be asked for, desired for, beyond one's spiritual self, the Atman. And a last quote, guys, I'm going to share that Shankara says, in Samkhya, since Atman Purusha is pure consciousness, which cannot be defined further, and Prakriti is responsible for the creation of the empirical world, Purusha is regarded as essentially inactive. But while in Advaita, the multitude of souls, of course, the karmic chain of transmigration, oh my God, this is like a huge bracket. So, okay, I'll read it from here. I'll read it from the beginning, guys. In Samkhya, since Atman, Purusha is pure consciousness, which cannot be defined further, and Prakriti is responsible for the creation of the empirical world, Purusha is regarded as essentially inactive. But while in Advaita, the multitude of souls, now this is the, giant part of the sentence in quotations. So the multitude of souls, of course, the karmic chain of transmigration might hold together one and the same soul, but they are supposed to be innumerable chains representing different souls. So he says the multitude of souls is only valid on the empirical lower stage of reality. Yeah. I mean, sure. That could be very true. So pretty much, guys, what he's saying there is that multidimensional perception is the bottom of the mountain and the top of the mountain is a singular truth. That means imagine a sort of apocalyptic moment for every subjective bubble of every human being realizing that the whole cosmic presence and intelligence stands as one field of being, you know? That's a pretty heavy moment, That means like coming home from work and suddenly realizing you're the whole universe, So that's for the quote tunnel, guys. I simply read that to I simply read that to kind of show different views on the self, on the self that's within. I realized something years ago. It was one of the most profound kind of realizations of the day. And realization for me, very playfully, it's kind of like a moment where you notice your real eyes as a being. Inspired by a quote from Victor Hugo that I remember one of my uncles telling me. He told me Victor Hugo had a quote where he said, "Nothing is more as powerful as an idea in which its time has come." And that sentence was like a hammer blow into, it was like a philosophical Rubik's Cube thrown at me, you know? I understood the immediate depth of it, that yeah, a new idea can change the waves of our times. What Steve Jobs did really changed the world, definitely changed the world. What Steve Jobs did inspired many artists. In other words, realizing that ideas live longer than the objective body. That means the pleasure that you get from just self gratification is more temporary than a pleasure one gets from a collective gratification. And a collective gratification is like after 8 billion beings take their heads out of their own boxes of belief, they begin to notice what is actually here. And what it is a decent requirement of a balanced relationship of chaos and order for civilization's greater ideas to come out. What that means is it's a battlefield, and we have to kind of create a sort of protection for the certain ideological pillars of civilization. There's a difference between an architect that has designed a structure where every day he has been on site seeing how everything was being placed, do you know? Compared to a new architect that comes on the project and has to just continue what was there before. So it's like you value what has been really touched by your free will first. So truth is the same. You see, the human nature, we are like lions. We are not like hyenas. But you know what I mean by that? That means the nature of the lion is that this is kind of like maybe too much of an animalistic wildlife metaphor, but like the lion, it has to hunt the prey itself, and then it trusts its own action, you know, before trusting other action. And only when you've trusted your own action and you've piloted for a while, then you will become wondrous about the other, you know. And it's typical, guys. Every big project will have resistance. But the thing is, the advantage is how much of that resistance can be turned into momentum. So imagine every problem in your life suddenly became the opposite of a problem. The whole purpose of the mind, I find, is that we get to exist more than once in the moment. I'm going to give you an example. We have three kinds of people. We have the archetype of the fool. We have the archetype of, how would I say this? We have someone who doesn't know. Person one doesn't know. Person two, God, how do I say this metaphor? Just a second, guys. I just wanted to give this idea that pretty much we have human beings that are, even though they're living on this planet, they are stuck in their inner realities. And we have beings who are in the middle, they're navigating between both, and we have beings who are on the opposite. They're purely in the stuck in the objective reality, as if they're a human being, but they've come here. The way their free will has acted is like violence. You see, there's violence going on. I see it in nature, of course. Why would you not see it in civilization? Every forest you go, or every somewhere you go, there you will eventually find an animal that is dangerous. You know, so why it's like it's not too far fetched of an idea to see that in our cities. Okay, the human nature can become animalistic. It's very crucial because on some level there is an elemental chemical component to human balance and psychology. And then there is also, alongside this, all the whole subjective orchestration of the significance of the moment. Now, we have to, I consider, like, how do I say it? Like, you have to be the pilot of your own intelligence in this life. And until you realize this, I feel the true joys of life are not accessible. You see, the child is conditioned in a state of mind where, because it's familiar with dependence, it does not see itself as the leader of its own intelligence. When it comes to the subjective realm, not only are you the pilot, not only are you holding the steering wheel of your attention, but the you that is an attention will be, it's like it can be experienced as rhythm, with known rhythms, conscious known rhythms, which are projected, and unconscious rhythms. An unconscious rhythm is as if you're walking somewhere, you suddenly hear music so beautiful that you cannot even move for a second. You have instantly been transported to, for example, the projection of a dream. Good music to a yogic mind is like, any being conscious of their subjective realms. If they really are touched by music to a point they become emotional, that means there is a film, incredible film occurring behind your eyes, that those tears are a response to. Who was it? I think it was Beethoven, Ludwig van Beethoven. He says, don't just practice your art, but force your way into its secrets. For it and man, for it and knowledge can raise man to the divine. Just think about what Beethoven is saying. He's saying whatever you see in this life, whatever, if there's something you trust, something you know, something your natural interest, a true natural interest as a being has gone towards. Now imagine Beethoven is standing right beside you and shouting at you. You know, don't just practice, but force your way into the secrets of the creative phenomena. And only that's when mastery arrives. I find there is no parameter to mastery aside from just an ability to see the unknown, to see the limit, and not foolishly, but with the importance of the efficient result going through. So what that means is, I believe it or not, I learned this from a show. What I'm going to say next, not what I said before. It was something that I saw in this show that I'm just going to tell you very vaguely, that there was a scene where there's these soldiers in a kind of human extinction scenario, and they're about to go into this kind of warfare against like these giant opponents, and in some sense they know they will all die. And so if we're finding ourselves in that moment where the general is standing there and telling them, this is our last kind of official task, you know, get ready, we're going to fight, like something like that. And one of the soldiers is paralyzed with fear, and all the veteran soldiers have died. So all the new scouts are kind of like, they're kind of, and one of them, his hand's shaking, and he suddenly asks a question with his shaking hand. And he says, you are saying that we will all die, and rather than better than running away, it's better to fight? And the commander fearlessly, he says, yes, you know. And so he says, you're telling us it's in some sense there is no meaning, and that's when the general says, no, it doesn't mean there is no meaning. Then he goes on this rant and he says, there is meaning because we live for those who will continue to live after us, who will ask the question. And he looks at the person and says that it is like in the storyline, the world, the human condition is very kind of cosmically cruel. That means it's a very messed up situation for human beings in this story. So in that situation, so the general's shouting and says it is a sort of our rebellion, our rebellion against a cruel world to rage with the full potential of our free will. That means if the end is coming, humanity is like on like a cavalry marching towards like the unknown with the full potential of the free will. Do you see? So then the intelligence and the true clarity of the vision doesn't just become in regards to the precision of design and form and information, becomes to the effort of the willingness to be and become and bring. So something like that, guys. You know, the story was we rage against your advanced use of your conscious will is like a rebellion against the cruel world, because human beings are kind of like, they fall on two sides. Some people either feel the world has pushed them too hard, you know, or in some sense they feel they have pushed the world too hard. A lot of social psychology can be divided into this. It's to be honest, tension maintenance, do you know? Which means sensitivity to what the attention of the human being is. Do you know? When you realize that you have a subjective realm, you realize others have a subjective realm. Then when you're, for example, talking to them, you realize, all right, this being's subjective realm has a sort of freedom, let us say, you know? So it's like suddenly realizing another human being is not just another body, it's another mind. And that mind has a sort of internal constitution, as if every person has glasses on, and through those glasses, they see the world they want to see. You know, and sometimes we have to have the courtesy to take off our subjective realm to kind of make it just the water, the ripples on the pond of the subjective realm to settle and just observe, you know. When somebody says if life has to have a purpose, that means nonstop your conscious waking state has to be in an archetype the whole time. Sometimes in life, it's like it's not even about thoughts. It's just like a pleasant moment where you've woken up and you have like a cup of coffee or tea or whatever and a notebook in front of you and you just write a few things, you know. So it's like reality can function in incredible simplicity. It can function in incredible complexity, but because we're in a changing sort of universal kind of experience, change means that it doesn't matter how much you try to be comfortable or uncomfortable, it changes. Do you know? So the embrace of change is a sort of ultimate contentment, is it not at that point? And the Buddha said, like, there's three jewels you got to consider. These three jewels, any human being who becomes comfortable with these kind of is becoming more comfortable in acknowledging or becoming content, because the conclusion has to do with an emotional balance. A lot of things that human beings do, whether it's even subjective activities and endeavors, it's like the attention and the energy has to value itself. In order to value itself, it either it moves objectively or subjectively, you know. You can say in a dream state, when one's dreaming, that's when you're actually just a thought. I can totally accept how in dream states we are our thoughts, but how in the waking state, you know, we are the body which somehow has access to thoughts. You know, so I even thought about it. What if it's like the ultimate, like if it was a sort of onion style multidimensionality, sort of concentric circles covering the whole cosmic kind of phenomena, like it's all in one sphere. And so the ultimately the sphere that holds it all, I thought, what if it's alive? Do you know? What if we realized, like, in one moment of sight, there is an endless universe? That means even though I'm a temporary being, the amount of manifestation, the amount of stars and galaxies that are out there, it's just ridiculous. We are honestly alive in such a ridiculous existential condition that I think really we have no choice to bring world peace out of silliness. You know, imagine like 2 days after world peace. Imagine, okay? Somehow the whole world, we see doves in the sky. The day after world peace, white doves are flying in the sky. We're like, oh my God, nobody has to worry about anything anymore. Imagine it was like some ideal utopic scenario, okay? And imagine an extraterrestrial landed in this kind of story in the moment we're creating to prove a point, you know? This extraterrestrial lands and says, for example, like, how do you guys do it? How do you guys do this world peace? Do you know how do you guys bring world peace? And we're like, we just asked, and we're like, what if we just considered it? And we just considered it. And that's it. That means there doesn't need to be complex routes when you can realize phenomenology is always an experience of now. So for me, it was like, you can say the artistry of having an empty piece of paper and being able to draw on it. Suddenly I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. What is it? Could my mind be like an empty piece of paper and my thoughts or phenomenology being subjective phenomenology being written on it? Is my mind a piece of paper where like ideas are being written on it throughout the day? You know, and then it's like a notebook, so you know, turn the page, and so you suddenly see the ideas of yesterday are more dim, but today has a new page. So I was kind of thinking, like, is my mind a notebook? You know? But it was like a sensitivity, guys. It wasn't really. It's contentment, and any person who is conscious of emptiness, their life can become full in new ways, I find. The Buddha said the three jewels were impermanence, incompleteness, and imperfection. What that means is sometimes you might want to do something perfectly in this life, but you cannot maintain something forever in one way. That means really the stories of our lives are kind of like, you know how like in certain like when children are kids, like they all go in a line and one of them says something and they pass down the message and eventually the message ends up becoming something else. I feel the same has occurred with history. Anyways, guys, I feel I should end the talk here. Thanks for tuning in. If we can consider a subjective realm, then it's, I think, wise to study it. And when every person realizes that they have been a student of their own moment, only then they can really realize that the prime mover of thought is attention. So study yourself as a creature of attention and you'll be fascinated how much of life will just instantly have more freedom to be revalued, you know. So thanks for tuning in, guys. Much blessings and namaste.